What in the Asphalt Princess is going on in the Gulf of Oman? If you had not been following the news, and this is what's going on with shipping, there was a hijacking attempt yesterday in the Gulf of Oman that resulted in armed Iranian personnel climbing on board a ship, the Asphalt Princess, and attempting to hijack her and take her into Iran. While at the same time, numerous other vessels reported not under command via their AIS. I'm Sal Mercogliano, associate professor of history at Campbell University, a former merchant mariner, and an adjunct instructor in maritime industry policy. And what I want to do for you today is unpack this story. What in the world just happened? And what do we think happened? Now, there's a lot of information we don't know, and I don't know. So let me caveat my report with this. A lot of information is just coming out now, but some things I can report on that are not being reported in the news. So I think it's very important to kind of get this information out here. So first off, this is the ship in question, the Asphalt Princess. The ship is UAE. It's owned by a UAE company. Basically, she operates carrying asphalt. And just to be clear, too, for the Iranians out there who are hijacking vessels, if you want to hijack an asphalt carrier, knock yourselves out. But I got to say, one of the worst ships to be on is an asphalt carrier. This is not pleasant work. The asphalt has to be heated. It's not comfortable work on an asphalt carrier. This is not glamorous in any ways. This is not grabbing a Carnival cruise liner. This is a pretty weird ship to grab. But again, let's get back into the story here. So this is the story from G Captain via Reuters about the ship being released. And just go into some detail here on it. Oman on Wednesday identified the Panamanian-flagged Asphalt Princess as a tanker involved in the hijacking. This was reported through the United Kingdom's Maritime Trade Agency earlier. The statement by Oman Maritime Security Center was the first official confirmation of Tuesday's incident in the Arabian Sea, which maritime security sources had told Reuters involved suspected Iranian-backed forces. The UK's Maritime Trade Operation sent a warning notice based on a third-party source on Wednesday that people who had boarded a tanker involved in a potential hijack had since left, and the vessel was, which it didn't identify, was safe. And one of the things that happened during this attack is we had a lot of questions about this. If you look through AIS at vessels that were out in the Gulf of Oman at the time, a whole slew of them reported not under command. And there was a big question about why are vessels reporting not under command. There was suppositions about mines being hit, missile attacks, potential drone attacks. But let me explain why what was reported here. So this was reported throughout the mainstream. This is Splash 24/7, talking about the hijackers leaving the Asphalt Princess. AP talked about this. Reuters, again, just talked about this. BBC had this in. And here she is right now. This is Asphalt Princess right now, Panamanian flagged. She's out there in the Gulf of Oman. Let me zoom out here for a minute to give you the bigger picture of this. Give it a second to buffer up here. So basically, this is the Gulf of Oman. This is the entrance into the Persian Gulf. And this entrance is always crowded with vessels and shipping. There we go. Just coming in there, right there for you. So this is the entrance in. So here's the Persian Gulf, Straits of Hormuz, Gulf of Oman, and then this goes out into the Indian Ocean. There's India, there's Oman right there, Saudi Arabia. And when you zoom in here, you can get the image of how packed this area is. This is the main channel coming in here. Let's move this over a little bit for you to see. You'll see these massive anchorages here going into the Persian Gulf. Ships just anchored out there. Ships anchored off Fujairah right there, including in there that anchorage off Fujairah. You'll see the Mercer Street, the vessel that was hit by the right there. This is the vessel that was hit by the UAVs a few days ago, resulted in the death of a Romanian crew member and a British security personnel member on board. But this high traffic area, this highly dense area here, especially coming in and out of the Gulf of Oman, is packed with vessels. Now, this is part of a larger story that's out there. Since 2019, we've seen repeated attacks on vessels. This is a list that was put together. Let me pull up that list for you here. Let me find it right there. There we go. This is the list that was put together by Lloyd's list that talks about how shipping has become the epicenter for this. They put Saudi-Iran proxy war. I would throw Israel on there too, because the Israelis are involved in this. We've seen this going on since May of 2019, and I'll have this link in the show notes. We've seen attacks on vessels. Initially, there were 4 attacks on ships at that anchorage off Fujairah. Then we saw attacks the following month on 2 vessels underway in the Gulf of Oman. Speedboats came alongside, attached mines to them. And then we've seen this kind of escalate and grow throughout this period here. We saw the seizing of the Stena Imperio. This is the UK flagged vessel by the Iranians. They held that vessel for a couple of weeks where they held it. Later on, they grabbed a South Korean vessel. The reason they grabbed the South Korean tanker is they're upset that South Korea has basically frozen Iranian assets in their country, and they were demanding the return of that. This has spilled out and escalated. We've seen attacks on Israeli-operated vessels, car carriers, and then most recently the Mercer Street. We've seen attacks on Iranian vessels, including Iranian naval vessels in the Red Sea. And so this tit for tat has been going on now for 2 years. And up until this point, it had not involved a death on board. And we saw those first 2 deaths with Mercer Street, the 2 crew members I mentioned before who have died. But now we have this hijacking at sea of a vessel. And let's talk about this hijacking and what happened. So probably the best source I've found so far is, or first off, here's the UK Maritime Trade Organization, Maritime Trade Operations. They reported the incident closed on 3 August. Boarders have left the vessel. The vessel is safe. Incident complete. But this is from Drayed Global. Now, Drayed Global does some of the best analysis on what's going on here. So they have this breakdown here that the vessel, the Asphalt Princess with their IMO number, was boarded by armed personnel and seized while underway approximately 62 nautical miles east-southeast of Fujairah, and it was described as a potential hijack non-piracy. So many of these ships have on board civilian security teams, but not everybody. Not everybody has them on board because of what had happened off Somalia back in the 2010s. A lot of ships started carrying these armed security teams, but some vessels don't, especially if they're operating up in this area, the Gulf of Oman area. Basically, East Africa is where we saw it. So this ship is owned by Prime Tankers, managed by Glory International. One of their ships, by the way, were seized a few years ago by the Iranians in a very similar operation. And this is audio that had been caught between the Asphalt Princess and the UAE Coast Guard. I'm going to play this for you. It's only a few minutes, but I'm going to play it for you.
Sir, we have the Irani people on board with ammunition, and we are in now drifting.
So he's saying that there's people on board with ammunition, armed personnel on board, and they are currently drifting on the Asphalt Princess. I'll explain that in a second.
In drifting, we cannot tell you exact our ETA to in Sohar. How many Iranian people on board? For around 5 to 6 people, sir.
So they reported about 5 to 6 Iranian people on board. Actually, we believe it's closer to 8 or 9 on board eventually.
What are they doing on board? I cannot understand, sir. You can better. I will give him. You can talk if you want to like.
So they're asking why these Iranians are on board, and then we didn't get a clear answer about what that is. Tankers loaded or low in the water, they're easy to board. It only takes ladders or rope ladders to get on board, and it's very easy to get on board. And they go on here to talk about the fact that the report suggests that Asphalt Princess was approached boarded by 9 armed personnel ordered to sail toward Iran. And then here came these unconfirmed reports, which you just heard right there. And then the vessel reported that it was not under command. So one of the processes that was learned during the Somali piracy was to make what's called a safe room on board the vessel. Basically, make an area where you can basically take the crew, hunker down, seal yourself in, and avoid the pirates. And, it's like a safe room or a panic room at a house. If you've ever seen the movie Captain Phillips, one of the things that the crew does is they get down in a safe area of the vessel, steel doors. You can barricade them, you can chain them, you can lock them in, you can bring the crew in and seal them in. But the other thing you do before you do that is you take the engines offline. You basically put the ship adrift, not under command. And so one of the things you would do is start taking the vessel and not putting it under command. Now, this would involve taking the main diesel plants offline, maybe dumping the day tanks so there's no fuel in them, throwing the generators off, resetting the main bus boards, the circuit boards. Basically, these crews that are being boarded aren't typically trained mariners. So if they don't have the crew to operate the vessel, they may not be able to sail the vessel. And even if they are, if you take a plant offline, it's going to take a while to get it back up. especially if you bleed the air bottles so that you can't start the diesel. There's a lot of things you can do to prevent it without damaging the vessel. And one of the things we saw that day was a batch of vessels start going not under command. Golden Brilliant was one that was mentioned. We saw reports of her basically being not under command. Kamandu was another vessel we saw not under command. There was an Indian vessel. There was a Vietnamese vessel. And one of the things that may have happened here was attempted boardings on multiple vessels, or the fact these vessels identified small craft around them. They didn't know who they were. They took the precaution to basically stop the vessel, kick off not under command, and lock the crews up until they knew what was going on. And the idea for this, by the way, is you seal yourself up and you wait for help to come. Naval forces, and again, you're in the Gulf of Oman. There are naval forces everywhere, patrol forces. You just have to basically hold off for a short period of time until those naval forces arrive. If you're in a steel sealed compartment with only one access in, and you've chained the door, secured it, and unless the Iranians brought explosives to blow the door apart, they're not going to get into you for a while, even if they got to cut the steel to get in there and the welds. So this is what ships have done for practice. If you don't have that armed security detachment, you don't want to get in a fight with boarders coming in. You seal yourself in, put the ship not under command, and drift around for a while. And it sounds like that is exactly what happened here. When the Iranians couldn't get the crew out of their compartment, they probably abandoned the vessel. A lot of these rooms will have security cameras in them so that you can see, outdoor exterior views of the ship, and also up on the bridge in areas so that you can see what's going on. And then you can make your exit. Again, most ships, are unarmed. That's a big thing. These armed security attachments are expensive. It takes a lot of money to have them on board. And plus, you don't tend to have them unless you're in a high risk area. And Gulf of Oman is risk, but I don't know if it's really high risk. So let's look at this analysis that they put in here. I thought it was really interesting. So this becomes at the height of increased tensions. We knew this already. The temporary detention was a show of strength by the Iranian Navy. This is what Dre had said. This is an attempt by the Iranian Navy to show strength. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. We've seen similar incidences about this. We've seen the Iranians do this in grabbing vessels. They go back here to the Stena Imperio. This is the British ship that they were talking about. This was seized following the seizure of an Iranian tanker, the Grace One, which was in violation of oil embargoes. We saw the Iranian seize the South Korean tanker, the Han Chuk Chemi, which was in response to freezing Iranian assets. The Vila, which was managed by a Greek company, was boarded and detained by Iranian vessels. We know that, for example, U.S. Navy vessels have been boarded by Iranians. 2 Mark 6 patrol boats in the northern Persian Gulf were grabbed years ago, and the crews detained. And the Iranians continue to do this, and they have a bad relationship with the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. And this may have been a show of strength against the United Arab Emirates, especially if they're in support with the U.S., the UK, and the Israelis in vowing to retaliate for the Mercer Street attack. We don't know. We don't know if that's what they did or not. It goes on here to talk a little bit more about the Iranians and talk about the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and what they're doing. The problem with understanding who this is from the Iranians, we don't know. Is it the Revolutionary Guard Corps? Is it the Iranian Navy? Is it a faction of the Iranians? Who knows? We know that according to that report, they were boarded by the Iranians. But again, they got off the vessel and vacated the area pretty quick. This is the guidance for vessels that are operating in the area. Vessels operating area to review security measures. This is what if hailed by Iranian forces, U.S. flag commercial vessels should provide name, flag state, affirm they proceeding in accordance with international laws reflected in the Law of the Sea Convention. One caveat on that: U.S. is supposed to follow that. We have not ratified that treaty. Of all the major seafaring nations in the world, the United States is the sole nation not to ratify that treaty. Yet we expect to follow all other nations to follow it. Slight issue there, I would tell you. If Iranian forces seek to board U.S. commercial vessels navigating towards the shipmaster should, if the safety of the ship and crew would not be compromised, decline permission to board, noting the vessels proceeding in accordance with international laws, immediately contact the UK Maritime Trade Office or the U.S. Fifth Fleet Battle Watch. There's a number you call. There's literally a 919 number you can call for the Fifth Fleet. If Iranian forces board any commercial vessels, the vessel should immediately contact these agencies. The crew should not forcibly resist the boarding party. And that's a big thing. You surrender to the boarding party. But again, if you have a panic room or a lock room that you can go into, you can get in there and prevent the boarding from happening. And I think that's what we saw happening in the Gulf of Oman with all those vessels going not under command at the same time. And it's confusing because who are these vessels raiding into for assistance? So, for example, one of the vessels was an Indian vessel. Indians are probably going to call the Indian Navy, which has a patrol force in the area. Who are they going to basically call into? And the response from this is going to be really interesting. I have yet to see what the Fifth Fleet, the U.S. Navy forces there, European Union, Chinese, Indian, you name it. Everyone's got Navy forces out there. What was the response that happened here at this time? This was the track here of the vessel basically drifting not underway here, Asphalt Princess. Some took it as she was heading toward Iran because of her course, but I mean, it was a fraction of a knot. She was drifting. She was obviously drifting at the time. And so what we see here is a precaution taken by these ships' crews. Now, the issue becomes if these boarders can get on board faster under the guise of darkness, not be seen, get on board, see some of the crew, then you have issues. This is what we're seeing. And why the Iranians wanted to do this, we don't know. We don't know what their ultimate objective is. What does this mean in the large context of global trade? Let's go back to this for a second. So is global trade going to come to a crashing stop in the Gulf of Oman? No. 1980s, during the tanker war between Iran and Iraq were throwing missiles, they were throwing mines, they were bombing vessels, ships were being sunk, crews were being killed into the hundreds, and you did not slow down the flow of oil out of the Persian Gulf. This is not going to have an impact at all on global trade. Ships are going to keep moving, ships are going to keep going, crews may not want to go there, and then ship operating companies will get crews from other countries, so they'll pay more money. They'll keep going. This is a fraction of a percentage of the ships involved that move cargo. You may see a little spike in insurance costs. You may see a spike in freight costs because ships are going to start hiring security teams to get on board, but there are a finite number of those security teams on board, especially after the death of the British national who was on a security team. You may see more naval presence in the area. And anytime you throw naval presence into this, you have the potential for conflict. Now, all of a sudden, you have more naval process. You may have nations who are typically not in that area send naval forces. We've seen China for the past 2 decades almost have a naval presence in this area because of fears of its trade. We've seen Indians Navy deploy into the area. This is, Panamanian flag vessel, but a UAE. UAE is obviously in the area, but there was a Singapore flag vessel involved. There was a Vietnamese vessel potentially involved. There could be new nation states playing in this. And Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel are in this tit for tat kind of Cold War between them that has been focusing on using vessels and targets ashore to kind of counter each other's moves. I think there's going to be a move against Iran in some way. I don't know what it's going to be yet. There's the 2 Iranian vessels coming back from St. Petersburg. They could have targets on them and be identified by somebody. I don't know who. There's Iranian commercial vessels out there. There's always the potential for this to spiral out of control. And I think one of the big concerns we have to have is watch this and make sure that calmer heads prevail. Remember, there's issues here about the Iranian nuclear treaty. There's issues in here about Iran being able to trade again its oil. So there's a lot of political moves. And unfortunately, shipping and mariners, those who sail on commercial vessels, sometimes get caught in the middle of things. If you go back in U.S. history and look at how many wars we've gotten into, a disturbing number of them have been caused because of influx or because of our interests afloat. Quasi-war with France, the Barbary pirate conflict, the War of 1812, Spanish-American War with the sinking of the Maine, World War I with the unrestricted submarine warfare against vessels, World War II with us sending vessels across the Atlantic and getting sunk, even the Vietnam War where an American destroyer was targeted in the Gulf of Oman. We've seen this happen before, the Cole prior to September 11th. We've seen this happen before. And sometimes, again, commercial, military, afloat interests can drive policy. And that's the thing we have to be aware of right now. So it's not all economics, it's not all trade, it's not all goods, but that's an issue that we need to keep an eye on. So I hope you appreciate the update. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos when they come out. Give it a thumbs up, and please share it across social media. Let's see if we can expand this out and get more people interested in global shipping. It's an interesting thing. And unfortunately, it's never goes very long without it making the news. So this is Al signing off. See you till the next incident or disaster.